Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. The trailer to Insurrection, Andy, I think, again, this violates the story.
Well, yeah, I guess the question is, what would they have done if they weren't violating the story? It's a tricky, I don't know. I can see your point, but at the same time, I feel like the trailer, to a certain extent, can only be as good as the movie it's pitching. And I just feel like, I'm not sure how they would have sold this story in a different way. How would you have done it?
Well, I'll tell you how I would. I'm glad you asked, Andy. I think that there are a couple of stories in here, and the problem is they gave them all up, and I don't think they should have. I think they should have stuck with either the forced migration story and left out the reason. The Fountain of Youth story, leave that out. Leave it out. We didn't need it. That's the whole function of the crew, is to discover what this mystery is all about. But the trailer, the action, it can all hinge on the forced migration story. I think it would have been great and still give us something of a mystery and still celebrate the why. Why are they doing this? Why is this a violation of the Prime Directive? Why are we going to force all these people off this planet? That we want to know that. We want to know why the Federation is against its flagship, crew. And I think they gave that up in the trailer, and I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I do feel that the movie itself misses out on a lot of those points. So I would argue that I think the film could have done a better job with some of those elements, particularly the Federation aspect of it. I don't want to, we're just looking at the trailer right now. Yeah. But from the trailer, yes, I feel like this seems like an interesting battle happening between the mission of the Federation and the crew of the Enterprise. And but there's, we're tying it into this whole Fountain of Youth concept that they have found on this planet in the Briar Patch, as they have described this nebula. I don't know. I guess I struggle with the nature of it. My recollection of watching this trailer was, well, it looks kind of like an episode. It looks kind of like something that they would do on the TV show. And that was kind of about it. It didn't really get me excited. I knew I'd go see it because it was Star Trek, but I just recall not being very excited by this one.
Yeah, well, I'm with. I think a lot of people are with you, but I think in terms of the trailer, in terms of the art and craft of the trailer, I feel like they missed an opportunity to really offer us a mystery, and that's okay. I think some of the humor was okay, but most of it is just energy and frenetic action, and in some cases they go to the score. The classic, the Goldsmith score, and the dialogue doesn't fit the second half of the trailer. And I think that mismatch really messes with a potential dramatic build. I think they chose the wrong music cue for the trailer. So in terms of, does the trailer actually deliver on being its own little, art project to sell the movie? I think they missed a lot of really easy slow pitches that would have made this a better trailer. And I think this fits in a long line of bad Star Trek trailers.
That seems to be the case, doesn't it? That seems to be where we're at with the trailers for this franchise. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think that my recollection of the First Contact trailer is that I enjoyed it. I just feel like, they revealed a lot of stuff that they didn't necessarily need to reveal. But it was exciting to me. I guess that's what I'm saying. It was a bad trailer in that they revealed things they shouldn't have revealed. But it was an exciting trailer.
Okay, I'll give you that. And so you're saying this is a bad trailer, and you also didn't care.
Exactly.
It is human nature to wonder what it would be like to never grow old, to experience utter peace and harmony. And it is also human nature for some of us to want what we do not have.
Alert! Area 12.
He's trying to remove the headpiece.
Do not delay the countdown.
And for others, to stand in their way.
We are participating in the outright theft of a world.
They were never meant to be immortal.
Who the hell are we to determine the next course of evolution for this people?
Radiation coming from the planet's rings continuously regenerates our genetic structure.
We're only moving 600 people. We'll be able to help billions. This is the moment we've planned for so many years.
How many people does it take before it becomes wrong?
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, Jonathan Frakes is back at the helm with the third in the Next Generation Treks in defense of the Prime Directive. It's 1998's Star Trek Insurrection. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you have enjoyed this show and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back-channel conversations on Slack, listen to the members-only weekend show, and get better chances of being part of our Listener's Choice episodes. Just head over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
Why are people so offended by this movie, Andy? You know what? I feel like there's just a lot of hypercritique of this film that is undeserved. Yes, I agree. There is some dumb stuff going on in here. But if we go back to what I said very early on in our discussion of the films, that it's possible that this may be one of those inconsequential Trek films. And that may be okay.
That may be okay, but it also might be one of the problems. That might be why people are disinterested in pursuing this franchise, because they have films like this that are like, you know what, I'm not enough of a Trek fan to go out and watch another one of their movies. I'll watch the one with the whales, I'll watch the one with the Borg, but that's about it. I'm not going to jump into just watching all their movies because of films like this that just feel like, it's a very meh film is how I felt. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it.
I get that. Is it really worse than Generations? I feel like that's where we're going to land. It's not. Okay. Oh, thank God.
My recollection of it was that it was worse than it was.
Okay.
It's not as bad as I remember. It's not, but it's not, it doesn't top First Contact.
No, and I don't think I think it'd be tough to find. I think there may be a hardcore somebody out there who might try to make that case. It'd be a tough case to make. Michael Piller, who wrote the screenplay, says that it's Heart of Darkness meets The Magnificent Seven, and he says, continuing, sometimes you just can't make that kind of thing work. That the structure just doesn't hold up, and I feel like I actually like this movie more than he does to hear him talk about it. And he wrote the damn thing, Andy.
I felt like he was just being dismissive of it a little bit because he was aiming for something that he didn't quite hit. And I can certainly see that. Like, I feel like there's an interesting premise going on here. And my issue that I've been finding with some of these Next Generation films is that these guys, time after time, they keep bringing on all the people from the Next Generation to make the movies. And I feel like they have had a hard time stepping out of their box. Even listening to Jonathan Frakes talking about this, he said, that we really wanted to tell another story that, something that the fans would really love. And I feel like they're working so hard at pleasing the fan base that they're not looking for a good story potentially outside of kind of what the norm is, and delivering something that's as exciting as what Nicholas Meyer had been bringing to the franchise when he was making the films.
So what makes this a terrible story, sort of a failure of Trek? I mean, we deal with the Prime Directive, we deal with these massive sort of moral and ethical decisions. We've got a hero captain leading his crew in protection of a defenseless people. This is very much, it's well-trod territory from the show. Where does it fall apart?
I think where it falls apart is the way that they feel they need to stick with all of the characters and what the characters' worlds had been back from the show. I don't mind seeing Troy and Riker getting back together. I thought that was kind of nice. They when was that? Like way early in the show.
Yeah,
when they were kind of a thing.
Well, it was even because it was before the show. I mean, they came back together on the Enterprise in episode 1, having already had and broken up a relationship.
Oh well, there you go.
So
it's so there's stuff like that. There a lot of the stuff with Data. There's just a lot of stuff that I feel like they've explored so often throughout the show that, and I understand they want to kind of kind of continue to expand on the characters, but at the same time, it's like, we're in the world of cinema now. Do something a little bigger. We don't need to just have the same sort of relationship tropes that you've been showing us over and over again on the show. And that's where I feel like I really ended up struggling with this film, because I really like the antagonist. I like Rua'fo and this whole conflict between the Sona and the Baku people. I thought that was really interesting. I liked the whole concept of the Fountain of Youth. I liked the battles. I like the Federation kind of getting involved in some capacity where it shouldn't have. But I feel like we end up having to spend so much time with the Next Generation team doing kind of their own thing that I get tired of it. And I feel like if they had brought people in who didn't feel like we have to get these characters, we have to give them chances to continue being who they were on the show, it just, I don't know. I just feel like that really slows the whole thing down, and it just bogs it down. It becomes less interesting because of it.
Do you think there is any challenge here in the fact that the cast, the crew, already had 7 years on television, which is it's a lot of water to carry compared to the 3 seasons of the original series. That it feels like perhaps the original series movies, and I think you could make the same argument that you're making about some of these character tropes, frankly, about Spock and his journeys around logic and humanity. I mean, that's well-trod territory too. But do you think at all that this is sort of the curse of longevity, that we knew these characters too well, and maybe the writers did too?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is something to that. I mean, look at what happened to the James Bond franchise. It finally kind of hit this wall of just absurdity when we got to Pierce Brosnan. And as much as I love him as an actor, I just feel like his James Bond films ended up being kind of the weakest links in the chain. And they're just very frustrating because of how, over the top they ended up feeling they had to be to kind of continue doing more than what they had done before. And then when they finally rebooted it and said, hey, let's just start afresh and just start at the beginning and just, make it all over again. And they went to Daniel Craig with Casino Royale. It's like, this is what we needed. We needed kind of that fresh start. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think there is something to that. These guys have had 7 seasons of TV shows. That's, I don't know how many hours, that's
lot like 178. I mean, it's ridiculous.
A lot of hours. Plus the 2 previous films, all before this, to kind of build on this, and kind of feel like, yeah, we need to continue Data's story arc. We need to continue Picard feeling lonely, and all of this stuff, and it's hard. And that, I mean, I do think Nicholas Meyer, when he came in, granted he brought Khan back from the TV show, but I feel like he was okay breaking some eggs along the way, and I just feel like all of these people involved right now, Rick Berman as the producer, all the way down, they're afraid of breaking any eggs, is kind of my impression that I get. It's like, oh, we got to be real careful with this. We got to be real careful with that. And they're just a little too cautious with it.
I think you're probably right. I am I think, more in line with the fan service on this film. I think this movie has a nice and sort of satisfying balance between the big moral and ethical questions of Picard's journey and the rescue of these people. I definitely have problems with how it's executed, but generally I think like you say, it's a good story. I think it's a good premise, and it's something that the Federation would be involved in. I think where it falls in line, you hear people who, the critics say this is not a Roddenberry thing. Like, Roddenberry would not have loved this, which is ironic because Piller, wrote this as sort of a love letter to Gene Roddenberry, right? I mean, he really wanted this to be a film for Gene. And Piller, if anyone, has enormous sort of understanding in terms of credibility in the Star Trek universe. But it surprises me that if it's a thing for Gene, that he has made it such a Federation military endeavor. Like, there is a way to write around this feeling like such a military film, right? The Federation would get involved, but it certainly would not get involved and be the instigator of this whole thing. They would separate 2 other warring parties, and I think that might have made for certainly a more Trek friendly film. It also may have neutered it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, and again, Piller, was really trying to kind of tell a story that he felt Roddenberry would approve of and everything. And I feel like, yeah, he was being overly cautious with trying to guide it that way. And now my understanding is that he kind of falls under a lot of the same beliefs as Roddenberry. So it is entirely likely that a lot of it was just his own beliefs that he was kind of putting into the film. But I don't know. I ended up watching this and going, well, that's, it's an interesting 2-part TV show. It wasn't anything, like, it didn't bring anything new to the table. It didn't, change anything for me that I was really excited about in the franchise. It just was there. And I think that's, I don't want to say that's its biggest crime, but to a certain extent, I do want to say that, we're talking in film now. And that's why I think I have a problem with this. And that's why I think a lot of people had a problem with this. In the world of the movies, we're looking for something that's actually a little bigger than what we were getting on the TV show.
That's an interesting thing you bring up. Cinematography is Matthew Leonetti. And I feel like this film, the challenge with this film is that it actually looks like a television show. I don't know why that is, because the First Contact did not, to me. Like, I was able to look at it, and it felt like a film. It felt cinematic, right? The texture, the grain, everything felt. This was so pristine. It felt like I might as well have been watching something on television. It was too crisp, too clean. I felt like I could see too many of the sort of the refinements and flaws in the sets. It just didn't feel substantive to me, and I wonder if that has an impact. Like, it just feels too small.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I think some of that probably comes from the way that they were trying to make this planet look, where it was very pastoral. It was very just kind of that it had that very kind of tranquil sensibility about everything. And every time we're seeing it, it just ends up feeling like it's really lit. There's a lot of light here in this little corner of California where they're filming it, and it's very green and it's lush, and it's like that's kind of it. It didn't stand out in any way. I think in the previous film, most of the exterior Earth stuff that we had was night. Maybe not all of it, but definitely a hefty chunk of it. And that allows for it to be a little more mysterious. We have little bits here, like when the village is under attack and they have to start fleeing. But it's actually, I feel like it mostly hovers around the village. Like, once they leave the village and we're like hiking along the trails, and like, Moses Picard is leading his people. It actually, I thought it looked a little better outside of the village. So maybe it's the sets. I don't know.
I just want to note that I heard what you did just there. Moses Picard, really, Andy?
Did you like that?
And I know I'm not the first to say this, but I have to say it out loud. Why is it that it's the Federation people leading the natives through the hills?
Right. How do they know where they're going?
Right. Clearly, what's so funny is the natives actually lead the Federation folks to the lake. They couldn't apparently find the lake, but all of a sudden when it's time to really evacuate, but the Federation people need to be in charge.
Right.
That's just ridiculous. You have a problem with Worf, I know.
Oh, well, no, I don't really have a problem with Worf being there. I'm totally fine.
You're anti-puberty, I guess. Anti-puberty, is that where you are?
Okay, this is an element that going back to the script, I think it's interesting that the crew of the Enterprise start to kind of have these moments where they start feeling the effects of this kind of fountain of youth planet in which they're floating about. I think that is kind of interesting. I think it's a little cheesy when Picard starts doing the mambo. I'm not necessarily a fan of Worf and his acne. So it's a frustrating thing. Oh, and my biggest issue is that Geordi gets his eyes back like in no time, but Picard doesn't grow a single hair on his head. Like, what? It seems like between the two, the hair would definitely come before new eyes.
Grow. Yes.
I really had I mean, it's a touching moment watching Geordi see his sunset or sunrise.
It is, and LeVar Burton does a great job. It's very sensitive. I felt all of the feelings.
Oh, yes, I felt the feels. Yeah. Within those moments, I think that's where some of the just the kind of the meandering comes from. Is the story, spends time with our team as they kind of have these moments of rejuvenation. This is something, I don't know if it stems from the direction or from the script, but I definitely felt it last time too, when we would hang out on Earth in the last film. And it's just, there was no motivating force for the people. And anytime we're hanging out with the crew on the ship, it's just like, yeah, they're just doing the mambo and they're flirting in the bathtub, and none of it feels like there's no, there's no ticking clock. And I feel like they're losing track of the story when we go into those moments because we're losing the ticking clock.
On the other hand, Andy, the aliens were lovely.
Oh yes,
right.
yes.
And we could start with Rua'fo and the Soma. I mean, I think the skin pulling thing was really clever. I really like them going in for their treatments, and I think their evolution as the the plastic surgery loving branch of the people is actually really nice, and you can see how the makeup has actually been or is actually used to influence their evolution as a people over the course of this film. So they used science and became this horrible, nasty, deformed, manipulated people, and the Baku on the planet used faith, and they just live and enjoy the natural environment, and they live 300 years. And so both of these people who knew each other and were all families, achieved the same ends. They lived a really long time, but the film also manages to have a message buried in there that, and I think it wears it a little bit, heavily on its sleeve, but it's a nice message. And I think it makes for a nice reunion as well, that you just hope that the plastic surgery camp actually is able to get a break. I thought they were great. It looked good and it fit the narrative.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, Pete, but I think that the Sona people, I know it's technically not a different race than the Baku, but I think just as they are, the Sona might be my favorite alien characters in all of Star Trek.
Really? Andy,
I think it's such a fascinating concept, and I love the makeup work.
Yeah.
And I just like the constants, the plastic surgery and the treatments and everything. I just was constantly fascinated, and I just could not get enough of watching good old F. Murray Abraham and friends playing the Sona on screen. They're just brilliant. I think they're just absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear you say that. And one of the things that it interests me about it is that they're such a great sort of, and I'll say alien nemesis, but they're not alien at all. Like their alienness comes from their own manufacturing of their longevity, and I think that's this, kids, is what happens when you cross your eyes too long. This, kids, is what happens when you stare at a TV too close. This, kids, is what happens when you can't put your phone down. Like, they are an object lesson in the use of technology, and I think it's great. I'm thrilled to hear you say that. That is like the sun just broke through the clouds in this conversation.
Now, I did have a question, though, and I doubt even you know this. But what were the Baku before? I mean, were they just normal folk? Like, were they, I mean, they're not human technically, I guess. But, I mean, were they seemingly human before they found this planet and ended up living forever?
I don't know. And that may be the greatest lesson of this film and this story. I've never been interested enough to research it.
Well, and that's a problem. The Baku just aren't that interesting. It's not only are they just all, a bunch of boring white people, they're just
it's so true.
There's just nothing very exciting about them.
Boring,
and even with
boring
Picard,
white people, and now they live forever. Are you kidding? It is a nightmare.
It sounds like Sun City. Oh. Did I say that? I love my neighbors. I really do.
You were saying?
Considering some of the other interesting species that they've had in the Star Trek universe, the Baku will not only, at least correct me if I'm wrong, but they've never returned to them. It's like a one-time thing. And we've certainly had plenty of one-time alien species on the show and films and everything. It's not anything new. But it's just, they're really kind of just very milquetoast and generic. I mean, they really aren't anything other than just a tribe of Swedes living in the hills, right? I mean, that's basically what we have here, right?
Yes. They're a tribe of Swedes in the hills. Yes, that's exactly right. And they occupy this single village in the Baku planet inside of the Briar Patch. Their population's about 600. Apparently, and they tell a little bit of the story in the film. They originated from this, technologically advanced culture, and they were able to fly through space, and they know all about androids, and that's all really great. But the Baku people that we meet are the dissidents that left the planet and found the Briar Patch. And I think that's they're the ones that rejected all the technology, and the Sona are the people who are a subgroup of them. So it's a subgroup of the original Baku, and they're the ones that wanted technology, and they wanted to use their phones too much, and their parents didn't tell them to stop.
But that was after they had the effects of the whatever metaphasic particles or whatever.
And that's why when they left, they started to deteriorate and needed to,
That's why they needed all those facelifts.
Right. They needed
it's really interesting.
It is great.
I find it really interesting. It's just a shame that it ended up being kind of lumped into this story on this boring planet.
It's almost as if they gave us an entire movie of the First Contact, just the Earth stuff.
Right. Pretty much. And it's funny because as sad as that is to say, I didn't find any of the stuff between Picard and the Admiral, what's his name? Admiral Dougherty.
Dougherty, yeah.
I didn't find that very exciting. Anything with F. Murray Abraham as Rua'fo I found exciting and a lot more interesting. But I love Anthony Zerbe. I feel like the aspect of the story between the Federation and the Enterprise was not very well developed. I feel like, we have this whole subplot where Picard orders Riker and Geordi to take the Enterprise and go back to the Federation and let them know what's going on. And then it's like I never quite they don't seem to make it there, but they have a message from them when they come back. So I'm like, so what happened here? It's just like that aspect of the story seemed like it could have used some more development. And I think it's always interesting when we cut back to the Federation down in San Francisco and we have some scenes of some people there kind of talking about stuff. And I feel like we needed a little bit more of that side of the story to really kind of give this whole thing a little more gravitas.
What are the other things in the film that you liked? One of the things that that I like so much, obviously, is the ship. We get the Enterprise E again, and they show us a little bit more of it. There are some new areas that we get to explore. Obviously, a bathtub, which I don't think I don't remember seeing in any of the other films. We also get the captain's yacht, the Cousteau.
I love that.
Yeah, very cool. Now, this is not the first time we get to see a captain's yacht. It is the first time in the film. The Enterprise D also had a captain's yacht on it. It was called the Calypso, and it was built right underneath the saucer section. This one is it's much better looking, and I think just very cool. And
it's like a little baby Enterprise.
It is. It's like a little baby Enterprise. It looks great, and it's it's combat capable. Obviously, we see it in a fight, and it's great.
I thought that was a really fantastic bit, and also we have a little shuttle dock, I guess you'd call it, up at the top of the ship. Before we'd seen the shuttle dock down on the back end of the ship, and now we have one kind of on the back side of the top of the saucer. I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting place to have the shuttles coming in and out.
Yeah.
Hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, right. Now, they did mention some other aliens that are not in the film. And I assume we should get into the Star Trek nerd questions.
Yeah, I just had a question because Rua'fo brings up, how the Federation was weak and falling apart, and the Borg had attacked them, and the Cardassians, not the Kardashians, and the Dominion.
So and all of DS9 is about the Kardashians. I want to see that movie.
So I wanted some clarification on that. Hey, they would fit right in with the Sona.
The sauna?
Oh, dear.
The sauna?
The sauna, no, with all the facelifting going on.
You're right, because I get it now. Now I was late on that.
See,
so the Dominion, Andy, this is a big DS9 thing. And in fact, like the last, seasons of DS9 were all about the Dominion. It's a major player. It's like they're the Federation of the Gamma Quadrant, and they're evil. And they're super, super advanced, super old. They have this very strange sort of separation of political power. So they have these changelings that are the founders, and then they have they're like the god worshipped group that is still around, these changelings. And then they have the another sort of mid-level political humanoid political group called the Vorta, and then the soldiers are the Jem'Hadar, and they are all about imposing this sort of religious order, across the entire universe. And so that's the Dominion, and DS9 was all about the Dominion War and the Dominion, or at least the latter part of the Dominion War. And so to mention the Dominion in this film is actually just a nod to DS9, and there are a number of nods to DS9, some of which were cut in this film that I think might have been a bridge too far for fan service, if it isn't too far already. The Cardassians are another group from DS9. In early seasons of DS9, the Cardassians had been in a war with Bajor, and that they have a very fragile piece at the start of DS9, where we have a Bajoran. The spaceship is actually, the space station is actually in orbit of the planet Bajor, and the Cardassians have to fly through it. And regularly, we have a number of Bajorans who are stationed on Deep Space Nine, and then so it is deeply, deeply tied to the lore of Deep Space Nine, and very, again, I'm really not sure how Roddenberry would have felt with that about that stuff, because it feels anti-Roddenberry to me. Anyway, that's who they are. Does that make any sense? Am I just rambling now?
Yeah, no. I figured it was somehow tied into the shows in some capacity, but I don't recall having heard of them. I feel like the Cardassians might have been around at some point during Next Generation, but I just don't recall them very well. So
when you look at the Star Trek cinematic and television universe, they really tied into one another, in this period of Star Trek.
Well, so here's a question for you. Obviously, First Contact was seen as a success. I mean, it wasn't as financially successful as it possibly deserved to be, but it was still a success. Do you think that they should have, instead of continuing with the Next Generation crew, should they have done like a Voyager film or a Deep Space Nine film and kind of explored those worlds a little more? Or do you think that sticking with this direction was the right way to go?
I think they were, I think Voyager, they were limited. I think that would have been a very challenging film to do, because Voyager had a discrete destination. They were sent out into deep, deep space, and they needed to find a way home. And the entire show was dedicated to one linear arc: get home. There were little offshoots here, but I think inserting a movie in there would have distracted from the central thesis of the show. And that would have been hard, even though in many ways I think the cast and the characters that they were developing there were some of the most interesting of the series. I would have loved to have seen it. And I think Janeway is one of my very favorite captains in the series. I think she's terrific. I also think it was ahead of its time. I don't think they would have put a woman captain on a film. I think they were just really pushing boundaries to put her on television. I think that was
we have too much to talk about with boobs in this film.
Good Lord.
It's like we couldn't have a female captain yet.
No,
Come
we're
on.
totally not ready for that. We're still putting the therapist in the captain's seat.
Yes, right.
So the other, the Deep Space Nine, I think, is a really interesting point, because Deep Space Nine does not have that challenge. Deep Space Nine was originally, most successful when it was, early on, when it was episodic. I think some of their best episodes were just, what can we tell in a bite-sized, notion of the show. Once we get to know the show, we had a lot of fun with these grand story arcs, season-long story arcs that worked really well. But I think, there is the most fodder because it's a spaceship, or it's a space station, and anyone can come through it. There are so much you can do because it's at the mouth of this wormhole, and you can put anyone there. And I think it's just great creative fodder for exploration that they just failed. And I also think the Benjamin Sisko, the captain of the I guess I can't remember what they called him, manager of the Deep Space Nine, is one of the also just a terrific actor, and I think that's a missed opportunity. So I'm with you. I think that was a mistake, and I think, if you look at what we've learned in many respects from experiments like tying the universe of Star Trek together and show and TV and all that when it was really working, is coming into play now when we look at how Marvel is playing with different tones, different themes for different films and different characters. I think it's a really good thing.
And tying so many properties together.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been interesting to bring more of the team from the Next Generation together with the Deep Space Nine team and really kind of develop it in that direction, which
is sad. They didn't, and now I think because of all the IP challenges, the intellectual property challenges that we have between Star Trek versus Star Trek, I think we're never going to see that again. That ship has sailed, and that's frustrating because I think there's a lot of opportunity to do really fun things on television that actually tie together. I have not watched Discovery yet. As we're recording this, Discovery aired. When did it air? Just Friday, I think it dropped on
just a few nights ago.
Yeah, and I haven't watched it yet. Have you had a chance to see it?
I have not. No, I'm curious though. Yeah,
I'm very curious, and what I have read about it is genuinely very positive, and so it makes me much more excited to invest in it a little bit. I have been watching the Orville, which is the comedy. The Seth MacFarlane comedy take on Star Trek. And because of the number of Star Trek people involved, man, can you feel the Trek just stinking up the place. It's everywhere, from the whoosh of the doors to uniforms, everything. This is a show that loves Star Trek. It loves it. Even if the humor is kind of lost, it's a show that adores Star Trek, and I think it's trying to figure out what it is. This is an example of, had there been a little bit more broad thinking leadership in how to tie these stories together, we may have had a Star Trek comedy that actually worked as a comedy and was under the auspices of the Star Trek leadership. Too early.
Yeah, right.
Do you have any other nerd questions? Was that it?
That was it for my nerd questions on this one. Yeah, just that.
Let's just a brief note on Data. Did you find Data's turn in this film positive or negative? We definitely are exploring Data as learning to play, and he has his little Pinocchio kind of relationship with a young boy, a Baku boy. Did it work?
Well, I was torn with Data on this one. I kind of like it. It felt like we went back to Data from the TV show, kind of that sort of thing. And maybe it's because he doesn't have the emotion chip, and he's just very much just doing his thing. I love, actually, I'm going to step back. I think that the start of this film poses a really interesting mystery, and I love the way that they set that up. It's like, okay, we've got this pastoral, bunch of people living out in the country. Oh, now we've got some people who are kind of spying on these people and watching their every move. We've got them intermixing with them in these invisible suits, and then all of a sudden we have this revolt happening within their ranks, and it turns out to be Data. I thought that was a really interesting way to kick this film off, and the reveal of the duck blind, as they say. I thought, this is a really fun setup. I liked it. I liked that Data was kind of, going a little haywire. I couldn't quite figure out why he went haywire. It says that it was because he got shot, and I guess he got shot because he discovered the lake. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay. So once we figured all that out, I was less excited about it. But I still really thought that they set it up nicely. Now, once Data goes into town and starts hanging out with the kid and trying to kind of show this kid, hey, technology can be your friend, I was a little bored with a lot of that stuff. I feel like we've just had so much of that stuff happening with Data over the show and over the other episodes that I feel like if there was a show or a movie that really kind of gave me more with Data, it was First Contact. I really enjoyed kind of that exploration with the Borg Queen. And here it's just like, I feel like we're just, beating a dead horse by this point, and I just wasn't very interested in it. So for me, I wish that they had focused on different characters or just focused more on the story.
I agree with you. I don't want to belabor the point. I think this was I
already did that.
Belabored the point.
Yeah.
No, I do want to say I agree with you. I think this data story in this particular film is unresolved for me, and it is so disappointing that it started with such a wonderful open. I was so thrilled with how this set up the Heart of Darkness story. I mean, this could have been the start to our journey up the river, and instead it was cut down to a couple of scenes, and it was disappointing that we didn't get more of that in favor of fan service and kind of cheap humor. Thank God. Oh, thank God. Data is a flotation device.
One of the worst.
I'm sort of done with that kind of stuff. And of course, on this idea of humor, we do have the boobs firming up. And I think this may be the only mention of boobs in the Star Trek universe. I'm not sure I've heard it anywhere else. It was, did it work for you?
I will say, when the scene first happened, I rolled my eyes like, oh, geez, you're kidding me. But then Data said it, and I actually laughed out loud because I wasn't actually expecting him to repeat that. So I will say, as much as I didn't appreciate them, just going to that level, it's not like it's a bad place to go, but it just didn't feel like Star Trek all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But it still made me laugh.
I agree. I will say one thing on Marina Sirtis. I think I am enjoying her more in every film.
I agree with you on that count.
Yeah. As long as I think she's finding, in terms of her character, what they do with her is sometimes puzzling. But in terms of her and her performance and her embodiment of the character, it's unfortunate that I feel like she didn't really reach that peak of figuring out who she is and maturing into Troy until so late in her run. Because I think for her, this is still this is one of the best performances she's given. So.
Well, and I feel like they were struggling trying to figure out what to do with her. It's like, what are you going to do with a counselor on board? All you can do is go and talk and spill your emotions. That gets played out really quickly. And so I felt like they were always trying to find new things to do with her because they're like, well, we can only do that so long. And so I enjoyed that they were doing some other things, but it's like, Dr. Crusher got to go off and head the academy or the medical academy at the Federation or whatever. And I just didn't feel like it was an interesting addition of a character, kind of the psychologist and as an empath. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if they thought that through completely before they wrote that character.
Yeah, because how much empathing has she done in the last couple of movies, right?
Right.
I don't have a whole lot on history backstory. I feel like we've kind of gone into that. Unless you have anything else, I do want to say that the ILM didn't do this film. They made
no.
There was an interesting merger between Blue Sky and VIFX. It was short-lived, and it apparently didn't go very well. It was bi-coastal, and the coasts never quite merged. But they did have this film under their belts, and they did all the effects were done CG, with the exception of one flyby when the ship is on fire at the end. That was a reshoot that was not done CG. How do you think the film looked in terms of the effect shots?
It was really disappointing. I felt like they took a step back, and I know they'd worked with Blue Sky on the TV show, but it felt like a TV show. Yeah. Like nothing stood out. And, part of me was like, well, it's because there's so much of it in daylight. They're flying around the planet all the time. And, but I can't completely say that either, because there are times when we're watching the ships fly around in the nebula, and I'm like, ugh, man, this is the best they could come up with. They had done such great work on some of the previous films. This one is a real step down effects-wise for me.
Well, and I should say, Santa Barbara Studios did all the outer space stuff, including the nebula and that kind of work, and also had more experience on Trek from the TV show. But you can kind of tell it didn't quite work. It wasn't their sort of best effects. And Blue Sky has gone on to really focus on feature animation, obviously, and has done some great work there. And the company ended up splitting up. So anyhow, is what it is. I'm with you. I still think the ship looked good. That's about the highlight. And the stuff on the planet, the phaser blast didn't even line up. Like, it wasn't a straight line from the muzzle of the phaser to the target. It was like more of a connect the dots, kind of a raster curve. And I was not a fan of that kind of stuff.
No, I wasn't either. It was it was pretty subpar for me.
Let's do the deep scene dive, Andy.
Let's do it.
So at this point in the film, the Federation has ordered Picard to gather up his people and get all the data on Data over to Admiral Doherty and get out of the Briar Patch because they got some stuff to do. But of course, Picard et al. Has already discovered the hollow ship underwater in the lake. And so we are talking about the scene where our three principals are confronting one another. Admiral Doherty, Picard, and Murray. F. Murray Abraham's Rua'fo are discussing the Prime Directive, the holoship, and the forced migration of the Happy Hippie people in order to strip mine the Fountain of Youth and destroy the planet. Also, Rua'fo's head splits, which is awesome.
That is so great. No! I love F. Murray Abraham,
right?
In this movie.
It's a little bit disappointing that he's not in this particular scene for the duration of the scene. Much of this is a conversation between Picard and Doherty. But why don't you sing the praises of Abraham before he leaves? Quick.
I think that he's an actor who knows how to act big and when it's appropriate to act big. And obviously, when you're wearing a lot of makeup, you need to act a little bigger just to kind of get through that makeup. But I mean, as this character, as Rua'fo, he just delights in this just over the topness that he's constantly displaying. It's so much fun to watch him, and we've got this fantastic moment where he comes in and Picard, I can't remember what Picard actually says, but he's just like, we're not going to leave. We've got some stuff to figure out here. And he's just like, no! And watching his head split. I mean, it's just like, it's so fantastic as the effects and the blood starts kind of like pussing out of his head. It's just disgusting, but brilliant. So, I think he was a great choice to bring into this film. I mean, he not only does he work the makeup really well, but he just plays his character just so maliciously and brilliantly. I think he is a highlight of this film.
I do too. I think he's terrific. I actually like the conversation itself too. I think in terms of how it is written, it's one of those central scenes where we have to understand what the ethical, moral challenge is here, and we learn because Picard has discovered the holoship. We learned that no, they're not going to leave. Yes, Picard is going to stand in the way of what the Federation is doing. Picard learns, in fact, that it's the Federation that Doherty is there on Federation orders to make sure that this happens, that this horrible, forced migration takes place, and that they're able to mine the planet's powers of youthfulness. And metaphasic particles. We have to walk out of this scene knowing all of that in order to sort of attempt to buy in to Picard's moment, his big moment where he takes the pips off his collar and puts them in a close up on the table. That ends up being sort of the punchline to the dramatic joke that is this scene, and I think overall it works.
You're looking well, Jean-Luc. Rested.
I won't let you move them, Admiral. I will take this to the Federation Council.
I'm acting on orders from the Federation Council.
How can there be an order to abandon the Prime Directive?
Prime Directive doesn't apply. These people are not indigenous to this planet. They were never meant to be immortal. We'll simply be restoring them to their natural evolution.
Who the hell are we to determine the next course of evolution for this people?
Jean-Luc, there are 600 people down there. We'll be able to use the regenerative properties of this radiation to help billions. The Sona have developed a procedure to collect the metaphasic particles from the planet's rings.
A planet in Federation space.
That's right. We have the planet, they have the technology. A technology we can't duplicate. You know what that makes us? Partners.
Anthony Zerbe as Admiral Doherty, he's kind of flat throughout the course of the film. He starts out as kind of, maniacally. He's maniacal, but he doesn't even seem like he cares all that much. And when it's finally outed that he's been wronged and he's standing in the middle of the bay with all of the, prisoners, he says, "Oh, I didn't know I didn't know. I just didn't know." He's exactly the same sort of emotional tenor as he was at the beginning of the film. And this scene, I think, capitalizes on that. There's no intensity in his defense of his efforts.
Yeah, exactly. And again, going back to my problems with the story, I really feel like they could have used more of a connection with the actual Federation in this, because leaving it just to Doherty really kind of leaves it flat. And if he's our sole representation of everything the Federation stands for, it's just not that exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really unfortunate, because I think Patrick Stewart is capable of making this a very exciting scene, and I think you can feel it. You can feel like he's bouncing up against a very low headroom of the story. How can there be an order to abandon the Prime Directive? This is a thing that we have learned over the last 7 years of the show is the principle behind which he stands the firmest, right? And so when Doherty presents him with that line, the Prime Directive doesn't apply. These people are not indigenous to this world. They were never meant to be immortal. We're simply restoring natural evolution. You can tell that Picard is struggling a little bit with that, and yet he does not falter from his defense of the Prime Directive. I think I love the intention of the scene. I struggle that it was not quite delivered.
We are betraying the principles upon which the Federation was founded. It's an attack upon its very soul, and it will destroy the Baku, just as cultures have been destroyed in every other forced relocation throughout history.
Jean-Luc, we're only moving 600 people.
How many people does it take, Admiral, before it becomes wrong? 1,000? 50,000? 1,000,000? How many people does it take, Admiral?
I'm ordering you to the Goran system. I'm also ordering the release of the Sona officers. File whatever protests you wish to, Captain. By the time you do, this will all be done.
Well, here's a question I pose to you, Pete.
Oh, please, sir.
Thinking about this whole notion of the Prime Directive and what it's standing for, and I was like, okay, so to a certain extent, Admiral Doherty has a point, right? This isn't these people's world. They've stumbled across it, and they've decided to make it home. And it happens to be the fountain of youth that can kind of, help everybody. Okay, so if instead of when Picard arrives and they come down and it's just this tranquil, happy place of all these wonderful hippies just hanging out and being happy, and Picard didn't fall in love. Instead of all that, say that they come down and it's like a malicious little group of antagonists who are fighting against them and trying to, shoot them for taking away this fountain of youth that they have discovered and they were hoarding. Where would the Prime Directive fall? It seems to me that in that particular storyline, they would say, whoa, these people, this is not their world, and they're keeping everybody else from this. We need to actually stop these people from hoarding this, so that, again, going back to the what we've heard several times in this franchise, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. We need to get rid of this horde of pirates who have stolen this fountain of youth, and allow everybody to have the benefits of this.
It pretty much destroys the logic behind the movie
completely
at the hands of a love story.
Exactly. That's another issue I have with this, is like, I don't think the Prime Directive is all that wrong in this particular case, because it's like, it's not these people's world. Why is it okay for Picard to say, hey, these people have a right to be here, if they're just nice people. But I guarantee if this was a story about people who were on the world, who were angry, mean, like pirates hoarding this place, it would be a fight to get rid of them.
Well, so there are two questions. The first is, when does it become their planet, right? When is it their homeworld?
Sure.
They've been there for 300 years, right? Or
Sure, because they're on the Fountain of Youth.
Because they're on the Fountain of Youth.
They don't naturally live that long. They're only there that long because of that.
But they were there for that long. When does it become their planet? Sure. How long does it take? When do I become a native of
301 years?
You were not born and raised in Phoenix, are you? When do you do you ever become a native? Is that 300-year mark stand for you? So I asked that question first, and does that apply? And second, would it have been a more interesting story had Picard had to come to the defense of the Prime Directive, protecting a bunch of jerks?
That definitely makes it more interesting.
I would have loved to have watched that story, but probably wouldn't have been as great a love story.
Well, I mean, and thinking about your first question, like when do you become a native? I mean, you could say that of rabbits in Australia. It's like they lived there for an awfully long time, but they weren't a native species and they were destroying the native species. Now, if it was a story where, okay, you've got these people who live there who they've lived there for 300 some years, but they also happen to be destroying the native species, then where would the Federation fall? Like if there was like a native fauna or something that was actually dying because of of the
Baku, they're there.
The Baku, yeah, right.
No, that's a good point. They're actually the Federation. The entire foundation of the Federation's argument should be to protect a fern. That would have been a movie I would love to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, all I'm saying is that it poses an interesting question, and it to me speaks to some of the foundational problems that this script has, is that I just don't think that it was written as strongly as it needed to be to tell this effective story.
Totally agree with you there. We already mentioned Matthew Leonetti behind the camera. Anything of note in this scene?
Not really. It was pretty standard. Some of the little camera moves kind of emphasizing characters as they would step forward into the lens or as they would lead the camera as it would pan around them. Nothing too fancy. It just, as I looked at the different shots again, I'm like, it seems pretty safe, and that's kind of what I felt with this particular scene. I will say, tying camera work with some of the effects, we don't run into it in this particular scene, but there are scenes in the Sonar's main ship, and also when we go on to the collector, both of those, they have like these intensely blue windows like throughout their areas, and all I could think of when I was looking at them was like, did they forget to replace the blue screen? Because it's like just a solid blue, like blue screen blue.
Yeah.
Why is it lit this way? And why did they decide to set it up this way? I was really kind of struggling with that as a look. I'm glad that we don't have it in this scene because we're on the Enterprise, but it was something that I really struggled with.
I think that's a great point. I thought the same thing. It didn't look great. Herman Zimmerman is back behind production design, and again, he's amazing. And so you can't fault him for, the sets.
Which room are we in this
We're in the
particular
captain's
scene?
ready room.
The ready room. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not a, this has never been a real standout set,
Well, it's like his office, basically.
Yeah, it's off the side of the bridge, and it's where he goes for his private time. It's the little room right outside of the Oval Office in the White House. The president's actual office is. So
is this the same room that he had the fight with Lily, and he has the wall of the little Enterprise models? No. So what was that room? Because I thought that was
that's like the conference observation deck. Like there's a big conference table in that room, or he's sitting at the end of this conference table in that room working on one of his things, and it is lined with a statue of all of the Enterprise ships. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a different room.
Gotcha. Different room. But it's still, I mean, this is not a great standout exemplar of Zimmerman's work, but it's the Enterprise. Looks good.
It's the Enterprise. I mean, there were elements of the film that I thought he did nicely. I wasn't overwhelmed by the sets for the Baku village. It weirdly, I know they built this huge village and made it look like I can't remember what part of California, but they built this giant village. But as I looked at it, it always just looked kind of small and not that exciting. And I wish that it was something that spoke to me more as a little more Star Trekian, I guess.
Of the village, not Tuscany.
Yeah, the village. Right, exactly. right, exactly. Not like I was on vacation over in Europe or something.
Right, that's definitely what it felt like. The Jerry Goldsmith is back. Your man?
Yeah, he's got a nice little bit of music in this particular scene that just kind of emphasizes the particular fight that Picard has with Doherty about, how many people is it going to take? Is it 1,000? Is it 50,000? That's a really great scene. I like what Picard is doing here. And I think that Goldsmith really does a great job of emphasizing some of the stuff going on here. This is a really strong score. I actually really like the themes for the Baku. Just like all of the stuff that he does here, it's beautiful, beautiful music. And I think that this scene doesn't necessarily kind of hit the high notes for the great themes that he has, but it's effective in what it's doing.
I think it is. Do you get the feeling that maybe Jerry Goldsmith has more fun writing the music than a lot of the people in making the movie? Like in some cases, I felt like the movie just does not live up to the score.
No, I completely agree.
That is so sad.
Quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I think he does such an amazing job. It just really sings to me. I just love it.
Yep, I agree. We've covered a lot of stuff in terms of other highlights. Anything else before we jump into our closers?
As far as Jonathan Frakes as the director goes, I mean, I think that he has some directing skills that I like. Listening to him talk about this film is actually kind of funny because it seems like he has a lot of problems with it too. And I feel like it was just, for me, this one all comes back to the story. I just don't think that our man Pillar really had a great story. But I do think Frakes does some nice stuff, here and there throughout the film. But I don't think he quite hit it out of the park as much as he did with First Contact. But I do still think that he's doing some interesting stuff with his directing.
I think so too. It's interesting that he is he directed episode 5 of the Orville, which is as yet unaired. We just hit episode 3, I think, this week. So a couple of weeks we'll be able to see Jonathan Frakes in the chair of a Star Trek-esque series, and he has just been announced today that he's been added to the directing ranks of Star Trek Discovery, which we already mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as he jumps back into the Star Trek and Star Trek-ish fray.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the, speaking again of nods to Deep Space Nine, one of the cut sequences, which I don't think was on the director's or the deleted scenes, certainly not on my version, was a clip of Armin Shimmerman, who plays Quark, who shows up at the end of the film to, Quark on DS9, shows up to build a casino. He says he's very excited he's going to build a casino and, everybody's going to live forever, and it's going to be great. And Picard, everybody knows who he is. He's a Ferengi. They're all about the greed. Picard shuts him down and assigns Worf to deal with him. And Worf says, "Oh, sir, must we?" Because, of course, he knows Quark from Deep Space Nine. And that is yet more fan service that I think was probably wisely cut. It's a bummer because I really like Armin Shimmerman. Every time he shows up somewhere, I'm in. He was the principal in one season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Pretty sure he wasn't. I don't think he was the one that was eaten by the students who thought they were dogs. But anyway, he's great. He's someone to look out for.
Those are the guys with the really big ears.
Yeah,
right?
big, and the ears are their most sensitive erogenous zones. So anytime somebody touches their ears, they get all frisky. That's where they want to be rubbed all the time. So it's really funny. So tell me about Star Trek posters.
So I was looking through all the different posters because, it's just one of those things that I do.
It's your way.
And I think it was actually pretty interesting to note, this is just kind of a weird little note, that all of the posters, there's at least one poster for every film that has been made for the various franchise thus far, that for each one of them, where it features a ship flying through space. Now, this one, the Star Trek Insurrection poster, looks awfully like kind of a flipped version of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. That one had kind of a Klingon's face on the bottom of the frame and the Enterprise up at the top of the frame. This one has the Sona up at the top of the frame and then the planet down at the bottom of the frame. It was kind of an odd little flip. But of all of the different posters that there are for the various Star Trek films, there's only one film that does not feature a ship at all. Do you have any idea which one that is? I think it's actually two. No, it's one. There's only one.
There's only one, and it's of just the Next Generation ones?
Now, of all of the 13 Star Trek films,
that doesn't
only
include
one
a ship.
does not feature a ship flying.
I would say The Voyage Home.
No, they actually have the bird of prey flying under the
right, of course,
under the bridge.
That's an excellent point. How about wait for it? Well, it's Nemesis.
It's Nemesis. I don't know if that speaks to the film or what. And we'll certainly talk about this next week. But I find it interesting that every film, has I won't say a highlight, but always at least features a ship flying in space. And for some reason, Nemesis is the one where they decided we're not going to show a ship flying at all.
They needed the silhouette and the Tom Hardy and the knife above his head.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
That's what they needed. Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Random little tidbit. But I do like the Insurrection poster. I like the kind of that face kind of floating up in the sky.
Yeah,
it's
too.
pretty haunting looking.
How to do it awards season?
This film wasn't exactly a big splash at in the world of awards. It did have 3 wins and 8 nominations. Nothing too exciting. Just some random little awards that didn't like the Online Film and Television Association or the Hugo Awards. So nothing really that was crazy exciting. At the Saturn Awards, the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, it did get a Best Science Fiction Film nomination, though. It was a tie, actually, for Armageddon and Dark City. Those 2 films won. I think that's funny in retrospect to think that Armageddon...
I can't believe that's in the same sentence.
I know, it's Dark City. But anyway, this one lost to that tie. And then Michael Westmore once again lost his makeup award to Vampires, John Carpenter's Vampires of all things, which I just rewatched recently, and it still is pretty terrible. So sad to see him lose because I think that the Sona, like I already said, are just fantastic.
Too bad. What about the budget? Did it? I mean, obviously they ended up making another film after this, but did it really earn it?
Well, this team was in the middle of this successful series of films, and Paramount did up their budget, giving them $70 million or 103.6 in today's dollars. As before, the budgets keep going up, but they still have yet to beat out the first film from 1979. Insurrection, again, opened during the holiday season, hitting theaters on December 11th, 1998, opposite everyone's favorite, Michael Keaton's Jack Frost.
Oh, man.
Needless to say, it easily took the number 1 spot that week. But then it dropped to 4th the following week when new releases You've Got Mail and The Prince of Egypt, along with A Bug's Life in its 5th week, pushed it down. It left the top 10 after just 4 weeks and went on to make $70.2 million domestically and $47.6 million internationally, for a total in today's dollars of $174.3 million. It ended up with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $686,835, making it the worst profit for a Star Trek film so far, except for number 5. That one still cost less, though, so this actually is the least profitable Star Trek film thus far, making it not even 2 times its budget back. Still, it was good enough, apparently, for one more go with the TNG team, though it's going to be a 4-year gap before we get back to it next time.
I don't know. This conversation has not swayed me from my position that this film is unjustly maligned in many ways. I still had fun watching this film. I would actually watch it again before I would watch Kingsman 2. But it's just Star Trek. It is inconsequential in terms of the overall arc of the series. But I had a surprisingly better time watching this film than I expected.
Yeah. I didn't. This was just really felt very middling to me. You know, it didn't wow me. It didn't. I didn't hate it. My recollection was that I'd kind of hated this one, but I ended up going, you know what? It wasn't bad. It's just kind of forgettable, and I think that for me, that's its biggest crime. But it does have the Sona.
I think we agree on that. It's not forgettable, right? He breaks his own forehead with rage. That's awesome. Yes. All right, Andy, I think it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you can see the list of movies that we have ranked really meticulously over the years. And, if you just swipe over in your podcast app of choice to our show notes, you will see the link to this film in Flickchart. You can just jump right over there and add it to your own list. Let's see how it stacks up. What's first?
First up, we have Star Trek Insurrection, or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Definitely Oh Brother.
That's an easy one to start with, yeah.
Star Trek Insurrection, or Atlantic City.
Oh, dear. Jeez, I don't remember how we felt about Atlantic City.
I remember we liked it. It was a little slow, my recollection, but I enjoyed the characters quite a bit.
And there is that whole lemon juice. It's boobs. It's a boobs movie.
I'm going to say Atlantic City.
I'll say Atlantic City, too.
Star Trek Insurrection or Stripes?
Do we have to watch all of Stripes?
Right, exactly. I'm going to go with Star Trek Insurrection.
Okay.
It's,
It'll occupy more time.
Exactly. Star Trek Insurrection or From Hell?
I think Star Trek Insurrection.
I ended up enjoying From Hell more on this last watch. I'm going to say From Hell.
All right, I'll give it to you. You know what? I just, at this point, that's not a sword I'm going to fall on.
Star Trek Insurrection or My Dinner with Andre?
Star Trek Insurrection.
I would say My Dinner with Andre because it has more going for it, but I still have to go with Insurrection.
Yes.
Despite its issues. It's middle ground for me. Star Trek Insurrection or Ninotchka? I'm going to go with Insurrection on this one.
Insurrection, please.
Star Trek Insurrection or Black Christmas?
Jeez. I'm going to say Insurrection.
I think I am too.
That surprises me.
Yeah, it surprises me too. Star Trek Insurrection or Postmortem? Little Pablo Larraín.
Insurrection.
Insurrection.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, that puts it at number 260 on our chart out of 318. There you go.
Well, it's not high.
It's not high. It's in the lower 20%. But, I don't think that's bad, I guess. I mean, I feel like we've talked about so many great films that I feel like, it's not going to end up in the highest slot, but I think it's okay.
Yeah. All right. What does this do for you on your personal list?
I looked at my personal list and it was at about 2000. It was in the 2000s. And I re-ranked it. It ended up almost in the exact same spot. So 2085 is where it's landing out of 3814. So it's at about a 55%, which fits for me feeling so middling with it.
Yeah, mine's actually a little bit further from you. It's 631 out of 997, and so that puts it really in the bottom section of my list, which is interesting. It says I should rate it elsewhere at 2 stars based on this ranking, and I'm a pretty solid. Listen to me, I'm a pretty solid 2.5. On this film. So, but I am going to give it a heart. I would watch it. I would watch it again. It doesn't set me into a cold rage, but it was fine.
Yeah, I think that's where I land with this, is at a 2.5 with a like. It's like I said, it's very middle ground Star Trek. I can enjoy it, but there's a lot of stuff that I also don't like with it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to take the good with the bad with this one. But it has some really interesting elements that I really enjoy. And if I get to watch Murray be the most fascinating Star Trek character that I just love, then I will definitely check him out again.
I think so too. I struggle a little bit because of just where my flick chart rankings are, because on my initial ranking, this came in below Generations, and that's not good. That's not good at all. Because that should not be the case, and thankfully, I got to re-rank it, and it ended up down there with Borat. Generations did, so whew, what a relief. So anyway, we're wrapping up our next gen collection of Star Trek films. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, we'll be jumping 4 years to Star Trek Nemesis. That's what we'll be talking about. 2002 film from director Stuart Baird. It'll be an interesting one to chat about. This is one I don't have fond memories of, and so I'm really curious to revisit it and see if it's as bad as I remember, or better, or worse.
Oh, that's really funny. I actually have even better memories of this one.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, I think I really like Tom Hardy. I think he makes this film for me. Oh, it's been a long time. I can't wait. I can't wait for you to be wrong. You're going to love it. That's my prediction. This is going to be your new favorite.
You think so?
I think so, Andy.
Well,
I think so.
I feel like it's one that gives me the odd craving for the blood of a live Konar beast.
I don't know how that fits in our tagline, Andy. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
We're both at the bottom of the barrel.
You do it. You kick it off.
One. Okay. When you rely on shtick to keep going, it's time to take a hard look at the franchise, says a customer in 1999 who purchased this on DVD. Probably the most irksome characterization was that of Worf, who has since inception undergone a journey of self-discovery, fallen hero, resurrected man of honor, and now a foil for acne jokes in Insurrection. For our next movie, Deep Space Nine, anyone? I feel like I need to amend. Please.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
What's yours?
Mine is a 1-star by Shane, who says, not that great. I did not like the plot of this movie. And some of the actors did not do a good job.
That's like a mystery.
I know.
Who is he thinking
I won't
of?
tell you who.
Some of these 1-stars are really lame.
It speaks
like
to
like the one that is titled 1-star, and the comment is lame.
Right.
Oh dear.
Oh yes.
Well, as always, thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy, and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, the girl with the dragon tattoo, the girl who played with fire, and the girl who kicked the hornet's nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in Season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy. and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.